Welcome, I'm Martina, your trusty guide through the pages of Camp Half-Blood and beyond. Grab your camp shirts, ready your weapons, and let's embark on this epic adventure together. This is Delphi Dispatches. Since this is the last episode of the series, it's also gonna be like the last episode in this kind of format. And after that, we will just do a series as a whole analysis and analysis of the documentary that came out. And after we're done with all the TV stuff, I would like to do my Get to Know Your Host episode. So I encourage you to send in Q&A stuff via Instagram or emails, or the Q&A poll under Spotify, the comments on YouTube, wherever you like. The Instagram handle is at Delphi_dispatches_pod. The email address is delphidispatches@gmail.com. Let's start out with a few Percy Jackson news. Since I'm recording this the day after the finale, I decided to exclude most of the news about the series finale, and we'll tackle that in the next episode. So let's see what else we have. On the 25th of January, there were 2 interviews released I really liked. One was with Collider, where they interviewed John Steinberg on some special effects stuff, specifically on Cerberus. There was even a video linked in the article, which led you to the YouTube channel of Disney Plus, where you can see like the different layers of the CGI Cerberus. Now this video is like not listed, so you can only find it through the link or the interview. But if you're interested in this kind of stuff, I highly recommend it. It looks really cool. And I mean, maybe there's also some more stuff like this in the documentary. I've not seen it yet. Then the next interview was with Rick. He was interviewed by TV Insider and he was asked some questions sent in by the fans. Some of the things he was looking forward to were exploring all the backstories where Percy is not directly involved, since it's not from a first-person narrator like the books were. He discussed a bit of his cameo and Becky's cameo, which unfortunately got cut, or at least is like in such a way that we can't really see it. He also gives a backstory on why the food Percy and his mom like to eat is blue. It's because when he is stressed, he unconsciously starts eating orange food. That's why the Camp Half-Blood shirts are orange. And he also addressed the question about will there be more merch. He just said Disney is working on it, and I hope they are, because I need a lot of Percy Jackson merch. On the 26th of January, there was a video released on the YouTube channel of Hollywood Records, and it is part of their music docu-series The Big Score. And this time they had Bear McCreary on, who is the composer for the first season of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. In the docu-series, he talked a lot about how he came up with all the different sounds and also his backstory. So he started piano lessons when he was 6. And throughout his years learning to be like a composer, he met some of his idols and also worked for them. He also tells us that each of the trio has a distinct theme. And yeah, I just wrote down how he kind of describes them. He describes Percy's theme as aspirational, heroic, but at times vulnerable and gentle. And it's mostly just one French horn. And at the end titles, it's 6 French horns together. For Annabeth's theme, he said it was mostly an English horn or a bassoon or some woodwinds, and it was subtle and had a few moments with a lot of warmth. Grover's theme, on the other hand, was quite playful, with quirky little chord changes, and mostly there is this solo flute with a little pan flute in there. Of course, pan flute, satyr, perfect match. And all these themes were like made so they can be adjusted for more emotional scenes very well. He also talked about how he discovered the Percy theme, and that for the fantasy aspect of the show, they brought in unusual folk instruments from around the world, which I find really cool. And he also talked about how he loved hearing these different instruments all coming together and getting louder and louder. On the 29th of January, we had a video on YouTube come out. I don't know if I can describe this as a documentary. It is from Wait in the Wings, and it is a video about the history of the Lightning Thief musical. It's almost 45 minutes long, so I've not watched it yet, and I will probably watch it when I do an episode about the musical. Since this was the last episode, we had a lot of look back and thank you posts on all over social media. Some of my favorites are, of course, our trio from Waka, Leah, and Ariane, and also other actors like Charlie and Dior, our baby Percy Azriel, and also like the adult actors like Timothy Amundsen, who played Hephaestus. And also the crew sent a lot of wishes to the Percy series. One person who always posts cool stuff is Dan Shots, like he's one of the main guys, as you probably know. But also the director of episodes 5, 6, and 8, Jed Wilkinson. She also posts a lot of cool stuff and appreciation posts. And the last one, where I really love the pictures, which is of course the cinematographer. Of course he has cool pictures. And his name is James O'Loughlin. So check out all these people. I saw it mostly on Instagram, and it just looks great. Now, regarding the Percy social media highlights, I talked last episode about the trio being sighted at Disney World. Well, now all these pictures dropped. It was like a collaboration of Percy and Disney, well, at least Disney World. A callback for the end of this episode. If you watched it, you know why. And there are like a lot of different pictures and videos, and they all look really cool. And like the trio had so much fun. And from the pictures and photos we saw from fans who actually saw them there, we know these kids are so nice. I mean, we know it. We already knew it, so yeah. Then we got another video of moments on set. This was regarding stunt stuff, where the trio talked about learning how to do stunts, Ariane's goat walk, the wire stunts, the water scenes. It's really interesting, and I'm really looking forward to the documentary again, because I'm sure we will get more of that in there. There was also this really fun video about the trio testing out water beds. The boys were not very convinced about the water beds, but Leah seemed to love them. I'm not sure. I've never been near a water bed. Then we have the last 3 stops of our Percy Jackson Was Here tour. The first one I talked about in last episode, the New York stop, but we have 3 more to go. The next one was on the 26th of January in St. Louis, with the arch in the background, and as a photo prop you had the Chimera carrier / dog carrier bag. On the 27th of January they were in Las Vegas, where there was this cool wall painted and inspired by Percy Jackson. That was the background, and it was also inspired by the casino. And as a photo prop they had the letter from Hermes saying to the dumb kids, which I love. And on the last stop, on the last day, on the 29th of January, they were in Santa Monica on the pier. And there, the prop was the Percy Jackson logo made out of sand. So a really cool sand sculpture as a prop. And also the trio showed up. There were a lot of pictures and videos of them taking pictures with the fans, signing stuff. As always, they were really nice. And also, I didn't know this was actually a thing. I always thought it was just things they did in movies, and it was not real. They wrote in the sky. Yeah, this little plane came out and wrote, Percy Jackson was here in the sky. I was like, they can actually do that? I actually didn't think a lot about it, but still. But my only question for this was, what does Zeus think about this? I can imagine he's not really happy about it. Then we also got our last poster of the season of episode 8. There we have our trio in the middle. In the background we have some scenes of Mount Olympus and the throne room with Zeus in his throne. And there's some lightning bolts strewn throughout the picture. And last but not least, on the social media highlights, we got the Demigod Diaries of episode 7, where they did a lot of running. Ariane did a lot of wire stunts because he was eaten by Cerberus. We also got a scene of how Ariane got out of Cerberus' mouth, which looked really interesting, and how Leah was on the side of Cerberus and scratching him. Oh, also we saw how Ariane was drenched in fake dog drool, and it looked disgusting. The biggest and saddest news of this week are probably our hopes for season 2, since as of the recording of this episode on the 1st of February, we've not yet have a confirmation about season 2. Disney, what are you doing? We need confirmation for season 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. So we just need all of it. Thank you very much. We also have some updates on our awards. One of the awards has been given out. It was the Family Film Award, where Percy Jackson and the Olympians was nominated in the category of Best Ensemble Series in Television. This award was on the 27th of January and the series did not win. But we have a new nomination, and this time it's in an acting category. It is by the NAACP Image Awards for Outstanding Performance by a Youth. And who would be nominated in this role other than our very own wise girl, Leah Savay-Jeffries? And those awards are like community-based, I think that's what it's called, so you can vote. So go and vote for Leah now. The awards are on the 16th of March, and I think you can vote until mid-February or end of February. You would have to check. But yeah, go ahead, vote for Leah because she deserves everything. Now, the last thing of our news segment is our Rotten Tomatoes score. Now that the show is over, a lot of new reviews trickled in, especially from the critics side. This is why we bumped down our critics score a bit from 96 to 93%, which is still very good, and we're still certified fresh. Now we have 55 fresh reviews and 4 rotten ones, and the average audience score is now at 81%, which is about 4.2 stars from over 2,500 reviews. Now let's dive in an extensive part of Demigod Discussions for the final episode of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, episode 8, The Prophecy Comes True. We start out with something really cool. It's a voiceover from Luke, mimicking the one Percy gave us in the first episode. He's saying, "Look, you didn't ask to be a half-blood, but you are one. That makes you part of something bigger than yourself." We start out with Percy on the beach of Montauk, which was confirmed, so I was right last week. He has Riptide in hand. Grover and Annabeth are following him a bit behind, and Ares is on the opposing side of him with his huge sword. And we have like this cutting back and forth again like we had last episode, just a bit quicker, with the Ares fight and a training montage with Luke. Well, it's not really a montage. It's more like a scene where Luke shows Percy how to fight. And this was back when Percy still was at camp, probably still before he got claimed. And it's like in the woods somewhere away from the other campers. I actually don't know why, but maybe we'll find out later. It's just the two of them alone and training with wooden swords, and Percy doesn't seem to be very good at it. I mean, yeah, that's what training is for. And Luke, as the best swords fighter in camp, is the perfect trainer, apparently. He teaches Percy and helps him like the good friend he is. And Percy asks something every one of us has at least asked once in our life, probably at school. When am I ever gonna use this stuff? And the thing is, he talks while fighting, and it's like the strikes of the blades together are like perfectly timed, and I really love it. And for me, as no one with experience on sword fighting, Percy doesn't seem half bad. Until Luke overpowers him, of course. And Percy's discouraged because it is not like there are any rules or anything. But Luke responds with, of course there are rules. See, that's what warfare is. Knowing the rules so you can use them against your opponent. And Percy asks for example. And we get an example. Cutting back to the beach on Montauk. Percy demands single combat with Ares. Everyone else, including Ares, is like, what? I was also like, what? Why would Percy demand something so stupid? And yeah, he just rolls with it. He sets the terms that if he draws blood first, he keeps the bolt and Ares surrenders the helm. Ares just laughs at him. It's like a really guttural laugh. But Percy stays stubborn as ever and asks Ares if he accepts. And Ares says, I mean, it's your funeral, kid. Although, just to be clear, no funeral. Any trace of you left leaves a trace of my plan, and we can't have that. So yeah. Percy is in for some trouble. But Percy doesn't let Ares get into his head and says that he knows it was Kronos' plan all along and not Ares' plan. And he asks if Kronos also got to Ares through his dreams. But Ares just replies with gods don't dream. Interesting. But this also strikes a nerve with Ares, probably thinking like, no, this was my plan, what are you talking about? And Percy readies his weapon and Ares starts charging. And then this epic fight scene ensues. We've heard it hyped up by Ariane and Walker all the time throughout the press stuff, and I can see why they were so hyped about it. Percy can somewhat block Ares' first few strikes, but the god of war soon overpowers Percy and smacks him around. Thankfully, he didn't get a nosebleed. If you know, you know. At one point, Percy loses his sword, and Grover wants to charge in and help him, but Annabeth holds him back, which is so cute. And Ares power kicks Percy, and he flies at least 10 meters. But during that, he flies through this puddle, or is it a shallow beginning of the ocean? I can't really tell. And at this point, I knew it was getting serious. And you also heard it in the sound design. The seagulls were starting to squawk louder, thunder rumbled, and then in the background, you started seeing this tidal wave build up, and now we see Percy's angry. And he calls back to something he said in episode 5 to Ares. I warned you, if you're not careful, you'll find out who I am. Oh, great line. And the music keeps building and building in the background. The wave is getting bigger and nearer, and it crashes over Percy and Ares. But Percy gets this little bubble, so he doesn't get pushed aside. But it totally slams onto Ares. And he's drenched, probably has a mouthful of sand, and is pushed back onto the beach more. He crawls towards his sword, which he apparently let go. But before he could compose himself, Percy catches up to him and slices into his Achilles heel. How poetic is that? We see golden ichor, aka the blood of the gods, flow out of the wound, although we can't see the wound, of course, Disney. And we realize Percy did it. He defeated the god of war in a battle. What? Annabeth and Grover run to Percy's side, checking if he's okay, and Ares starts slowly clapping. And he tells Percy that the only thing he really won is an enemy for life. Ooh. He starts to glow gold, and the three have to look away because you can't look at the true form of the gods. I mean, that's mythology 101 there. And Ares vanishes. And the only thing that's left back is the Helm of Darkness. I mean, at least Ares keeps his end of the bargain. Annabeth picks it up, and Percy hears someone whispering his name. According to the closed captions, it was Sally. I think it was just an imitation of Sally's voice. By who, you might ask? You'll see later. They look towards the cabin and the light turns on. So the trio goes to the cabin. I mean, of course. There the radio is on and Percy calls out for Sally, but she's not here. It's Alecto. What? She's alive? I'm what? Didn't they, stonify her? But she's not here to kill him, because Hades sent her to retrieve the helm. They just set it on the table for her, and Percy says that he's living up to his end of the bargain, and he expects Hades to do the same. Alecto picks up the helm. She actually smiles, which is really out of character, I think, and wishes Percy good luck on Mount Olympus. And this goes. Grover and Annabeth don't want Percy to go to Mount Olympus. Their quest is already failed, the time is up, what else should they do? But Percy has to, because this is bigger than the quest. He tells us that the last war on Olympus kicked off World War II down here on Earth, and that they have to get Zeus to call off the war by returning the bolt. Percy has to tell him about Kronos. If a powerful god like Hades was so afraid of Kronos coming back, Zeus has to know about it. Percy sends Annabeth and Grover to camp so they can warn Chiron about Ares and Clarice working for Kronos. But Annabeth believes that Zeus will kill Percy as soon as he enters Mount Olympus. But Percy tells us that he's done running from monsters, which I love it. And Annabeth reluctantly agrees with him and gives Percy her necklace for good luck. This is so sweet. And to break the tension, Grover, best man Grover, asks how sure they are that this cannot just be explained in an email. I mean, same. I worked in an office for 4 years, and there were many meetings I thought, this could have been an email. Why are we in this meeting room? Next up, we're in New York. We have a thunderstorm going on above the city, and we enter the lobby of the Empire State Building. Percy just straight up walks to the front desk, and the clerk there is dismissing Percy, just saying the tour starts by the sign. But Percy just puts the Master Bolt on the front desk and says He's here to see Zeus, but he doesn't have an appointment. The guy, who is clearly frightened by the bolt, lets Percy use the elevator up to Mount Olympus, and he goes all the way up to the 600th floor. Percy exits to a magnificent city in the clouds. It looks like straight from a painting. Huge, but mostly empty. Because of the war, maybe? In some shots you see these vague figures in the city, which were clearly included via CGI. I mean, the whole thing is CGI. And we have another flashback to Percy and Luke training. We learn that the gods are all powerful, but they have to abide by the rules. They create demigods so they can break these rules for the gods. Percy asks Luke after this info, but if we can break the rules and they can't, shouldn't they be just as afraid of us as we are of them? Luke finds this amusing and likes that Percy is learning fast. And we find out from Luke that Annabeth is terrified of spiders. But she's a lot bigger than them. And what happens when she comes across one of them? Two things you never want to be are small and scary at the same time. Things that are small and scary get squished, Luke explains to Percy. Back on Olympus, Percy has to climb up to the throne room, which probably takes at least 1 hour, because it is on one of the highest points up there. When Percy reaches the throne room, it is not really a throne room, because it has no ceiling. I don't know, a throne area? I don't know how you would describe or call it. There we see Zeus in his throne. He looks small in this huge throne because he's probably a bit down to human size to accommodate Percy, although he would not have needed to do that. His throne is by far the biggest. He is the king after all. But Percy, without saying a word, walks into the middle of the room, unzips his backpack, and delivers the Master Bolt. Zeus walks towards Percy quite slowly as a show of like, yeah, I'm the king, I don't need to hurry. But the closer he gets, the louder this static coming from the bolt gets. As soon as he takes the bolt from Percy, the static disappears and thunder rumbles in the background. Percy explains that they didn't steal the bolt. Zeus just says that they failed to deliver it on time, and Percy tells Zeus about Kronos. Zeus just turns away, walks to his throne, and dismisses Percy, saying you may go now. But Percy doesn't want to leave. But Zeus kinda doesn't take the threat seriously apparently, saying, I know where Kronos is, I put him there. I know who Kronos is, I am his son. Of course he's gathering strength. Of course he's coming. That's what we do. We snap back and plot and strive. It was only a matter of time before he did it again. Surprisingly, Zeus thanks Percy for the news and tells him that is the only reason why he is letting him leave alive. And then Zeus says he may go now because he still has a war with his brother coming. And now Percy is being Percy again and does not read the room. He says the war can't continue. Zeus is getting really angry now, and as he shouts at Percy, thunder crashes in the background. For Zeus, the war only ends in victory, and Percy should be grateful. But he tries to tell Zeus that this is exactly what Kronos wants, for the gods to be divided, and Zeus is already weakened by his brothers. Percy tells him, your family is a mess. They don't support you because they love you. They obey you because they're afraid. Ares, your son, he turned on you the moment someone stronger showed up. Do you really think he'll be the last? How afraid of you do you think they'll be when your dad shows up, looking to put you back in your place? With this, Percy clearly went too far, and Zeus attempts to strike him with the Master Bolt. I'm like, oh no, Percy, oh no, Percy. But I say attempt, because who prevents it? None other than Poseidon himself. And the way he does it, oh my gods. He holds Zeus's arm so he can't strike a blow and surrenders. He says, I surrender. Take your victory, just spare my son. Percy, in the background, is just speechless. This is the first time he sees his father, and then this is the way he talks about him. Like, I'm currently tearing up while talking about it, so don't worry. Zeus starts talking about Percy as a forbidden child who should have never been born. But Poseidon counters with Thalia. Then the two start talking in ancient Greek. Poseidon asks who else knows about Kronos. And we find out it's Ares, Hades, Hermes, so basically everyone. Yeah. And Zeus will have Athena set up a meeting of the Olympian Council to discuss this. And the last thing Zeus says before he vanishes in a flash of light is, "Make sure I'll never see this one again." Oh, and this, I will talk about this sentence later a bit more, because it has so many implications. Unintentional implications as well. But now we have the first one-on-one of Percy and Poseidon, and it starts out with a direct quote from the book. "Obedience doesn't come naturally to you, does it? I must take some of the blame, I suppose. The sea doesn't like to be restrained." Oh, I love it. From the conversation Zeus and Poseidon had, Percy only really caught one word, patros, which means father. And Poseidon is impressed that Chiron has taught Percy so much, but it was actually Sally who taught Percy ancient Greek. And this, you can really see that Poseidon loves the idea of this in his face. And Percy asks Poseidon if he dreams. And Poseidon says the gods do dream, Ares is just a moron. And the only thing Percy wants to know from Poseidon is if he ever dreams of Sally. And instead of answering, he just looks at Percy like a proud dad and smiles. Suddenly he has another pearl and sends Percy back to camp without answering his question. Why? We just want a clear answer for once. Please. Percy lands in the grass on the border of camp, and the first thing he sees is Thalia's tree. Is this a foreshadowing of what might happen to him? And as he walks into the camp, we don't really hear anything except the music and some muffled sounds, but we see that the other campers are applauding Percy for probably returning the Master Bolt and saving the world. Nice. And at first Percy is the only one in focus, and then suddenly Annabeth hugs Percy. And then all the Percybeth shippers were going crazy probably. Same. But it's not just a gesture of friendship, but also a strategic move, a distraction to make Percy notice Clarice. She is just standing there with her two siblings looking angry. They're seemingly the only ones not applauding for Percy, and in the next scene, Percy and Annabeth and Luke stand alone in the entrance of the Hermes cabin. They tell him that it's complicated too why Clarice is still there. Everyone was ready to go to war, and an accusation against Clarice without any proof would accelerate the fighting. Now that Percy is back and he stopped the war, they can tell Chiron. Luke set up a meeting with Chiron far away from the celebration that evening, so none of Clarice's goons would notice, and Annabeth volunteers to keep an eye on Clarice while they're gone. During the celebration they're having for our trio, Percy and Luke walk through the woods with only a lantern, but since there are fireworks going off, the woods is somewhat illuminated. They end up at the same spot from where they had their training in those flashbacks, and Percy is in thoughts, thinking about the prophecy. Everything the oracle said has either come true or makes sense. You shall go west and face the god who has turned. Ares, you shall find what was stolen and see it safely returned. The Master Bolt and the helm, essentially. You shall be betrayed by one who calls you friend. This part is for Percy quite unclear still. And the last one is, and you shall fail to save what matters most in the end. Which was his mom, because he didn't really save her. Hades let her go at the end. During this discussion, it dawns on Percy who is the friend that will betray him. The reason Clarice is still here is because Luke hasn't told Chiron anything about her, because he knew she didn't really steal the bolt. He did. Luke is the lightning thief. Bum bum bum. He and Ares worked together to plant the bolt in Percy's backpack so that when the shoes would drag him down to Tartarus, the bolt would be delivered directly to Kronos. And Luke basically confirms it by saying, I didn't think you'd give them to Grover. Oh my god, what a betrayal. I'm curious, for those people who have not read the books, did you see it coming? I mean, I read the books, so I saw it coming, but it's still, wow, it was so good. Luke tries to convince Percy that he is still his friend and none of this was meant to betray him. Luke is here to recruit Percy. And he pulls out a sword, yeah, I'm not here to hurt you. Pulls out a sword. Yeah, sure, you're not here to hurt me, of course. That's why Percy panics and also pulls out his sword. But Luke just says, he doesn't want to fight. The sword is their way out of camp. He slices a hole in the fabric of space and time. So now we have a sword that can make portals. Nice. I mean, I know it was in the books too, but it really, except from this one time, I don't remember them using it. Yeah. And Luke tries to convince Percy to join him, saying, the gods want us to fight them, worship them, fear them, and they couldn't care less what we want. They're bad parents, Percy. They've gotten away with it for far too long. And Percy tries to appeal to Luke, saying that this isn't him, this is Kronos. But Luke is too far gone already. He slices another hole, and before he can fully open the portal, Percy steps in between the portal and Luke. He starts to defend the gods and mentions meeting Hermes. Big mistake, Percy. Because as soon as these words left his mouth, Luke instantly attacks Percy. But Percy has improved since the last training. He deflects most of Luke's blows, and during the fight, Luke manages to open the portal fully. While Percy is distracted, Luke gets some blows in, but Percy manages to slash Luke once. And as soon as he does that, Percy already feels bad and apologizes, but Luke seizes this opportunity to slash back at Percy. Now he's laying on the ground, and Luke cut his arm, so Percy is defenseless. And before Luke can deliver the killing blow, some twigs snap, which take Luke's attention at the right moment, because there's a dagger flying at his face. He easily deflects it, and out of nowhere comes Annabeth. She has heard everything, because she was wearing her invisibility cap. She draws her sword, ready to attack her brother, in parentheses, to defend her new friend. You can really see the sadness in Luke's eyes here. And instead of fighting them, he does the only smart thing and rushes to the portal, jumps through it, and it closes behind him. It was so action-packed, this scene. I loved it. In the next scene, we are back at the Poseidon cabin. It's probably the end of summer, and Percy is packing his things. We see that he has his first beat. Chiron waits for him at the door, telling him that saying goodbye is not easy. Percy just wants to go and see if Hades returns Sally. And Chiron offers him an armed escort. Even though he doesn't think Luke wants to kill Percy, Chiron thinks that Luke wants Percy on his side, since he knows Percy would be a powerful ally. Kronos can be very, very persuasive, but Percy is very, very stubborn. Percy is more than a hero now. He is a leader in the eyes of his fellow half-bloods. Next, Dionysus has entered the chat. He still does not know Percy's name, and starts yelling through the whole camp that those who are not staying year-round need to leave. Now. They need to get out, scram, disappear, everything of that. We see Annabeth at Valia's tree saying goodbye, since Annabeth is also going home. She's going to see her dad, who wants to show her New York, and she has to pretend like she's never been there. And then he wants to take her to Disney World, which she thinks is something like Waterland, but less determined to kill you. So she's not that wrong. Percy smiles and is so happy for her and tells her to just be a kid, which sounds weird also coming from a kid. Then Grover shows up and he finally got his searcher's license. It is like this flower on his shirt, so he can finally begin his own quest to search for Pan. And since every inch of the natural world has been searched multiple times, he's going to venture out on the seas. Percy tells Grover that he knows some people in management out there, so if he ever needs some help, he knows where to go. And then they make a pact to meet each other again next year at this spot next to Talia's tree. And then they hug. The music in the background is so good. I cried so much during this scene. I mean, probably during the last 2 episodes I cried so much. Next, Percy is back at Montauk. He walks along the beach to the cabin. When he enters it, it seems like no one's there. But suddenly, Sally appears. Our favorite mother is back. They hug each other and you can just see how happy they are when they embrace each other. Sally asks Percy what happened, so I wonder what she remembers, probably like up to the Minotaur fight and then waking up in the cabin. Suddenly you see Sally's facial expressions change and she tells Percy that it is time to wake up. We hear a rumble. It gets dark outside. There is now a fire in the fireplace and Sally is gone. So we know it is a dream. The next part is super creepy. The figure that has been in Percy's nightmares comes up the stairs of the cabin and stops in the doorway. For the first time you can kind of see what its face looks like. The vague human form holding a lantern. But Percy isn't having it. He just right out tells the figure, which is Kronos by the way, "Are you serious? We're still doing this? I won. You lost. Get out of my dreams already. Nice. Percy is still there. I love it. And Kronos tells Percy that they will meet again in his world soon enough. He says, your survival is the key to my return. And then Kronos blows out the lantern and everything gets dark. And Percy wakes up in his bed at home. Because Sally is opening the curtains, it is time for 7th grade. Nice. School. Yay. Percy tells Sally that he had a nightmare and he calls Kronos grandpa, and Sally, and me for that matter, we don't like that. She grabs a kind of dream journal, I guess, and asks Percy what he said this time. So he had other dreams about him already. Percy doesn't want to tell her and says, he said, don't forget to tell your mom how much you love her today. But Sally doesn't buy it and replies with, Kronos, the Lord of the Titans said that. That makes them smile both, and Sally kisses him on the forehead, and then to this adventurous song they start out getting ready to brave the real world. Sally is making blue pancakes for breakfast, yay blue food, and Percy puts on his jacket, grabs Riptide and his bag, and then they leave the apartment together. While this is playing out, we have a Percy voiceover, and he's saying, the stories you heard about Greek gods, heroes, and monsters, I'm there to tell you they're real. If you ever feel like you don't fit, like the world doesn't make sense, then you might be a part of our world. So don't give up, because we might need you for the fight ahead. I love it. And before the end credits roll, we have the inscription saying, in loving memory of Lance Reddick, of course. But it's not over yet, because we have a mid-credit scene. Yes! I've heard about it online, like from the people who had the early access. They said, oh, there's gonna be end credit / mid credit scene, and I just love what happened here. We are in the hallway in front of Sally's apartment, and there is Gabe on the phone with his lawyer, because apparently Sally is divorcing him. Yes! Sally, you rule, and Gabe, you drool. I love it. And it also seems like Gabe doesn't know how lawyers are supposed to work. He complains about it being expensive. I mean, yeah, of course. That's what lawyers do, but still. And he tries to get into the apartment, but the key doesn't fit. So Sally changed the locks on him. I love it. Seriously, I love it. And he, in all seriousness, asks his lawyer how to pick a lock. And the lawyer does the only smart thing and just hangs up on Gabe. Good choice on the lawyer's part. Gabe is frustrated, and then he sees a package at the door. He picks it up and it says, return to sender to Percy Jackson from the gods. Gabe, the dumbass that he is, commits mail theft and opens the box, which was not the smartest idea, since inside the box is Medusa's head. He promptly turns himself into stone. And also it seems like the box. So is Medusa's head made out of stone now? That would be a good wrap up for this arc. So I love this ending to Gabe much more than if they would have kept the original ending without the other parts. But my thoughts and feelings later. Let's see my predictions. So first of all, I have to apologize to everyone who thought I was crazy. And Athena did not show up this season. I was so convinced. I'm yeah, but she's in the credits and there are owls and everything. I'm no. It was just kind of a representation of Annabeth / because Athena's her godly parent and stuff. I'm no. I was so... it would have been so cool if I was right and no one else had guessed it, because I have not seen anyone else theorize that. Probably because it was a dumb theory. Yeah. But otherwise, I was quite good. I have a few hiccups. So we didn't have an extensive elevator scene to Mount Olympus. We just have Percy coming out of the elevator. Then there wasn't really an official beads ceremony. They didn't really explain the beads, but I don't think that's really important. And I also said that at the end of the summer they all leave. I'm actually not sure if it's the end of the summer or if it's just a few days after they came back. But yeah, the things I got right were as follows. I'm just gonna read them as I wrote them. Fight with Ares. Annabeth gives Percy her necklace for good luck. Poseidon helps Percy to some extent. Return the bolt to Mount Olympus. Empire State Building lobby. Throne room. Meet Zeus. calls off the war. Poseidon and Percy meet for the first time. Sally gets returned. Medusa's head gets returned to Percy's home. Back to camp. Party for the quest. The prophecy comes true, hence the title. We say a permanent goodbye to Gabe. Grover can go on his quest for Pan, and Annabeth will join her father again, and Percy will live with his mom. And we also have the post-credit scene. So I was quite spot on, but it was not like that hard. Now, theories and predictions. My theory is that we will get at least a season 2, and that hopefully soon. And maybe when I do the season 1 recap, I will do like general theories and predictions for season 2, or I will do a separate episode about it. We'll see. Now, some Easter eggs I found. The radio in the cabin, I put on closed captions and saw what the radio in the cabin was saying, so I'm just gonna read it. Authorities are warning the public to expect severe travel delays as hundreds of flights are grounded as the FAA closes most of the country's airspace in response to violent seismic activities disrupting the airbound radio signals, a phenomenon known as ionospheric disturbances. Sudden ionospheric disturbances, or SID, are typically caused by solar flares emitting from the sun's surface. The solar flares hurl, and that's the last thing you hear. So from that out, you can tell that the war is still going on, which Alecto later confirms, saying that Poseidon uses the earthquakes to clear the skies. So yeah. And since I said solar flares, I was like, is Apollo in the mix there? Probably not, but would be fun. Then the Olympus elevator. At the top, where you can see where the elevator is going, they had Greek letters. I thought they would mean something. They don't, I think. So the letters are in order are Alpha, Rho, Sigma, Tau, Epsilon, Phi, and Chi. I hope I'm saying them correct. And I tried to find out if those in that order means something. They don't. At least not what I found. If you found something that they could mean, feel free to DM me. I would be really interested. Then when we're on Mount Olympus, one of the figures we only see from afar looks like the Hermes from the credits, with the winged hat. Could he be watching Percy? That would be really interesting. And the last Easter egg I picked up was Luke's sword, Backbiter. It wasn't explained in the series, but you could actually see that it had two different colored sides to the blade. One is bronze and the other is iron. So the bronze part is celestial bronze, what Percy's sword is also made out of, meant for killing mythical beings. And the iron side is meant for killing humans. So not something a demigod would usually use. Now, thoughts and feelings. I have so many. I try to keep it brief. I try to keep it somewhat chronologically according to the episode. So Ares says the gods don't dream. Really. Because Poseidon disproves this theory and just says that Ares is a moron. So either Ares really doesn't dream or he is really not remembering his dreams, I don't know. While Percy and Ares fight, Annabeth is holding back Grover, and this shows his love for Percy as a friend. Because even though he is not a fighter and more of a pacifist, I don't know if he's officially a pacifist, but Grover has the vibe of one, that even then he would risk his life to save Percy at this moment. Oh yeah, speaking of the fight, if it wasn't clear, the way Percy overpowered Ares was with the help of his dad. Even if he wasn't physically there, Poseidon definitely gave Percy an extra bit of power to control the ocean. And if the Ares fight would have gone on for a bit longer, logistically Percy would not have won it. Because he's a 12-year-old fighting a 1,000-year-old god being. He just had the good luck that his father helped him and that he could do it quick, because Percy does not have the stamina to fight a god for that long. The next thing is Alecto. She's alive? I'm confused. Because we know in episode 3 we crumbled her to dust using the Medusa head. Now she's back. So either because she crumbled or the statue got destroyed, she got reformed, or Hades kinda did some magic there. And speaking of Alecto, everyone who is picking up or carrying the helm is acting as if it's really heavy, or it is really heavy. That shows you if Hades wears this thing on his head, that he as a god is so much stronger than a demigod or monster who would just be squished under the helm, probably. In the cabin, we also got some of the World War II lore, and I really like that they did it like this and not like it was in the books. because here we have the gods were fighting and that somehow sparked a war down here. But in the books, it's World War II was caused by demigod children of Zeus and Poseidon on one side and Hades kids on the other side. And it was implied that Hades was the father of some Nazis, if not even Hitler. So yeah, I'm happy they did not go with that route. I also love that Percy is saying he's done from running monsters when he's talking about Zeus. And this is such a good callback to episode 1 when Sally says, not every monster looks like a monster and not every hero looks like a hero. Because we know Zeus is one of the biggest monsters there is. Please don't smite me, I'm just spitting truth. The fact that Annabeth gives Percy her most prized possession next to her cap and dagger is... I just love it, because this is the only thing she has from her father, tethering her to her mortal side, because both the cap and the dagger are from her demigod side. And on that necklace, it's the ring of her dad, which is the only mortal part of her. And it's a true act of friendship when she gives it to Percy. And it is something to connect him to his friends and to ground him to the mortal world as well as it did with Annabeth. Because when he's going to Olympus, he is literally not touching the ground. He is not anchored to the mortal realm because he's floating in a city in the skies. What? And speaking of the necklace, Annabeth, putting the necklace on Percy gives major High School Musical 2 vibes when Troy gives Gabriella the necklace with the T on it. Yes. I also love how they still built in Annabeth's arachnophobia, even though they couldn't put in the spiders themselves. I actually like the throne scene better than the spiders, so don't come for me, Percy stans. And I also think that they put in the arachnophobia in such a smart way. Now let's move on to Olympus. The people involved in the making of the series have pointed out in multiple interviews, Olympus and the underworld are eerie similar, but totally opposites. I will probably talk about this more in the general season recap, when I will also compare Zeus and Hades. This is going to be interesting, I already can tell. Now moving on to the throne room of Olympus. The thrones look so cool. And they don't look like the ones in the books, but I think these are more fitting for the aesthetic. And on first glance, they all seem to look the same, but then when you get nearer and see the ones of Zeus, Hera, and Poseidon up close, you can see that they have intricate carvings in them representing their respective gods. For Hera, for example, you have peacock feathers carved throughout and the, I don't know what you call it, the place where you put your arms, the armrests, wow, are peacocks. Then Poseidon's throne has wave designs, and I think he has horses or hippocampi on the armrests, and Zeus has lightning bolts all over. I really wasn't sure what his armrests were. I think they were people, or at least faces. Is it Zeus's face himself? I thought maybe they were putting the animals of the respective gods on there. So for Zeus that would be an eagle, but it did not look like an eagle. But speaking of Zeus and lightning, the powered up Master Bolt design is so cool, because in all the promotional videos we saw the lightning going out on the lightning bolt. You know what I mean? So I was okay, but why isn't it doing that the whole time? First of all, everyone who's touching it would be electrocuted. Not a good idea. And of course it would only respond to Zeus, because god of the sky, lightning bolt, of course. But nonetheless, I love it. I told you that I would talk more about Zeus's last sentence, and the fact that the last thing Zeus says is, "Make sure I never see this one again," before he vanishes is somewhat ironic, I would say, since we know that the actor Lance Reddick sadly passed away just a few months after finishing filming, and kind of makes the statement valid because Lance Reddick will never see Percy again. But nevertheless, his performance as Zeus is top tier. Rest in peace, good sir, and this performance was amazing. Another question I had was, do demigods in this series inherently know ancient Greek, or is it just that it's easier for them to learn? Because in the books apparently they already know ancient Greek, so Percy would have understood the whole conversation, or maybe he just didn't listen. But the fact that Sally taught Percy ancient Greek makes me wonder, how does Sally know ancient Greek? It's called ancient Greek for a reason. It's not like around anymore. I don't think you can learn it. Or did you just teach Percy regular Greek? I actually don't know how the two languages correlate, like how different they are. They're probably very different. I'm just a little bit upset that one of my favorite lines didn't make it into the series yet. Maybe it will come in the future. Or maybe it did. I'll explain later. The sentence or the quote is, "Your mother is a queen amongst mortals." That's what Poseidon says to Percy. I know it wouldn't have fit in the conversation they did have, but I think when Percy asks Poseidon if he dreams about Sally, that's kind of what he said in his head, or at least thought about. Now let's go back to the camp, specifically when Luke and Percy are at this weird place. What is that place actually? It's away from the campers and not at any proper facilities. So why isn't Percy suspicious why they're training there? And there are these creepy statues and ruins. Why does this camp have ruins? That doesn't make sense for me. Were they old cabins or some other facilities? I have no idea. Is it maybe the entrance to the labyrinth? No clue. I also have a question, or a thought about Backbiter. Does it also transform into a pen or something like that? Because when they went there, we saw that Luke didn't have a sword with him. And before he brought it out, it sounded like it appeared. It made the same sound, or at least a similar sound as Riptide would make when Percy unpennifies it. Is that the word? I'm curious about that one. Now to the fighting. When Percy says that he met Hermes, right before Luke attacks, we see him snarl a bit. And if you look closely or pause at the right moment, you see that his scar seems to be more prominent, since it is a constant reminder of his failure on the quest that he was sent on, where he got it. And as far as I know, he was sent on kind of by his dad on this quest. Next question I have is, why did Annabeth know how to follow them? Did she not trust Luke? Did she meet Chiron, who knew nothing about the meeting? Why? I mean, good that she did because she's smart, but still. And I also love that Annabeth throws her dagger at Luke. And if we have the same backstory of the dagger as in the books, she got that dagger from Luke. She's here, take back your gift. I don't want it anymore. And Annabeth saving Percy is a callback to Capture the Flag, because there she also was standing there with her invisibility cap, and she just watched and did nothing when Clarice and her siblings hurt Percy. Now, since her friendship with Percy has grown, she did something. She took the fate in her own hands, basically. Yeah. And after that, we go back to the Poseidon cabin. And the first thing I noticed, there's a bed in the Poseidon cabin. This was one of the questions I saw circulating around the internet. Is there a bed in the Poseidon cabin? Because we don't see any. Or does Percy sleep in the water? Now we see that there is a bed in the Poseidon cabin. There we also see that Percy has finally got his first bead. But instead of having the same leather cord as all the other campers have, he just has it on his already existing necklace. Why? I mean, it's not a problem, just why? And then at the goodbye scene, oh my gods, I love Annabeth's hair. I can imagine her with her either siblings or someone from the Aphrodite cabin. She's venting and they're braiding her hair. I love it. And I also love that Grover's searcher's license is not just some plastic laminated card, but it's a flower on his shirt. I only wonder if he has to water it or take care of it, or if it is magic. I hope it is magic, so it doesn't get destroyed on the way. Now, let's talk a bit about Kronos. I love that Kronos is made up of sand, because now it's the first time you can really tell it. The other times you thought you couldn't really tell what he was made up of. Now you can really see that it's sand, the sands of time, because he's the Lord of Time. It's just so cool and creepy at the same time. Speaking of Kronos and the cabin scene, well, actually just the cabin, was this whole cabin scene just a dream? Or did it actually happen that way and Kronos just took this memory and put his stuff at the end and turned it into a nightmare? Because that would be really interesting to know. And then the next two things have to do with Gabe/Medusa. So what are they gonna do with the Gabe statue? And like, how do people react when they see a statue of their ex-neighbor just there? What are they gonna do? Are they gonna ship it to Auntie M's? Are they gonna sell it like in the books? I would be really interested. And also, since it wasn't just Gabe who turned into stone, but also apparently the box, did the Medusa head inside the box also turn to stone? Like, what happened to that? Is it not a spoil of war anymore? Or I would be also very interested in that. After so many thoughts and feelings, your brain is ready for the next thoughts, because it's trivia trials. I need to make jingles for these segments. I actually don't know how to. I'll figure it out. As always, let's start out with the answers from last week. The first question was about Hecate's pets. What are the name of Hecate's polecat and dog? So the polecat's name is Gale, and the dog's name is Hecuba. So in the Heroes of Olympus books, specifically House of Hades, I think, Hecuba is described to be a black Labrador, and in the description of the new book, Wrath of the Triple Goddess, she's supposed to be a Mastiff. I'm not really familiar with dog breeds. I mean, I know some basics. I can differentiate between a Dalmatian and a Chihuahua. So yeah, but I'm interested if this is like a big deal. Then the next question was, since we had a lot of Wizard of Oz references this episode, what year did the movie Wizard of Oz starring Judy Garland come out? It was the year of 1939. Wait, I just realized, is that the same year the D'Angelo siblings got into the casino? At least in the musical, they sing 1939. Oh my god, see, I have real-time reactions for you. I mean, you're hearing this like way later than I recorded it, but still. Now, on to today's questions. The first one is about the director of this week's episode, Jed Wilkinson. What other upcoming project is Jed Wilkinson also a director on? If you need a hint, I'm pretty sure this project will come out in February of 2024, or has come out depending on whenever you listen to it. Since I was so fixated on Athena making a surprise appearance this season, I have a question about her. What other goddess does the Athena Parthenos statue typically hold in her hand? You might know it from Heroes of Olympus, but also like in real life, because there are Athena Parthenos statues. As always, you can DM me your answers on Instagram, put them in the like Q&A stuff in the comments, and I will post the questions also in a story on Instagram. Now, as always, the best comes for last. It's mythical music. And this time it's really one of the best, because one of my favorite songs is Tiny Riot by Sam Ryder. He started out with TikTok, then he was on Eurovision where he came second, and now he's like really famous all over the world, I think. And he's played with people like Queen. I'm like, what? How? Great. And he is really cool. I went to a concert in a smaller venue and had like the VIP tickets because it was like the day after my birthday, and I met him and he's so nice. But why I chose this song is I think the song has like the vibe that it would fit in the series very well. Some of the lyrics also correlate with Percy's storyline, like turn the pouring rain into a tidal wave and fight it. Got something inside, don't hide it. I'm like, that's just Percy. There was also another Sam Ryder song in the running. I used it for a story post this last week. It's also from Sam Ryder and it's called Fought and Lost. But I was like, because like the chorus is like, it's better to have fought and lost than never fought at all. It's like they didn't really lose, so I don't think it's that good. And that concludes another adventure with Delphi Dispatches. Thank you, demigods, for joining me on today's quest. Please consider subscribing to the podcast. And if you want to connect with me on Instagram, just follow @Delphi_Dispatches_pod for updates and a fun community. This is Martina, signing off until next time. And remember, the real world is where the monsters are.